All right, so here's the difference between pro and amateur artists. Pro artists do the basics really, really well, and amateur artists think they know the basics, but they don't do it, and it doesn't show up in their drawings. Let's talk about that. So this is a lesson that I'm constantly learning, not just in drawing and art, but also in life and other things as well, which is this humility, right? Which is just because you know something doesn't mean that you're good at doing that particular thing. And I've seen this particular thesis in drawing actually a lot, which is I come across a lot of beginner, not young and beginner, sometimes they're old and beginner artists, and it's very easy to deal with old folks, and it's the mid folks, right? Like young teenagers who in their 20s and to early 20s, late teens, and it's usually them, and most of the time because they've not seen enough lives, and as a result of that, I'm not seeing enough life. I'm 30, and as a result of that, there is a bit of ego. And they don't know it. It's not like the ego kind of things. It's more like, hey, I know the basics. I know the fundamentals of things that I need to do. But when you look at their work, they're not applying the fundamentals. They're not applying the process. Now, here's a big piece of advice, right? And this is like one of these little unsolicited parts of advice I'd like to sort of share. And this is something that I'm also taking for myself. This is something to remind me as well, which is just because you know something, just because you know how things work, don't assume that you know how to do it. There is a theoretical understanding of how things work, and a practical application of how things work. I know how to paint. I know how, like these great acrylic painters and masters paint their paintings. But guess what? I'm not really good at painting in real life, right? I'm okay, I'm decent. And I need to put a lot more hours in order to get the same level of quality as a painter who always paints. Because I'm a cartoonist, I'm a draftsman. I can draw really well. I like to think so. But like painting, no, not my strong suit, right? I know the theory of it, I know the practicalities of it, but in application, it's very hard for me, right? So it's like that. I was having a conversation with couple, my operator in this business. He works along with me. He takes care of the administrative side of this thing. And one of the things that I'm trying to constantly tell couple is this, which is, and he knows it. Like folks like couple, he's not in his early 20s anymore. So it's like they're open to learning. But man, oh man, when you sort of say these things, like to get these things across to people who are not willing to understand or learn, oh boy, the ego is too much to handle. And so I would often tell couple like, hey man, you know how this works. Yes, you're right. This is how the process works. Is this showing up in your day-to-day actions? Let's say you cannot speak, right? You cannot speak. You don't have the ability to speak. How do you know that that person knows a particular thing? How do you know that person knows how to play badminton, right? Badminton or tennis. Well, they play tennis and they show you, right? So you can judge them through their actions, but most people sort of talk their way out of things. And therefore, as a result of that, they fool themselves thinking that they actually know the thing. In fact, in reality, they don't know the thing. Rather, they just know the information. Knowledge is not wisdom. I'd like to sort of maybe elaborate more on that. I haven't thought that through fully, but at this point in time, I think knowledge or a piece of information does not equate to wisdom. Wisdom is actually being or having the right judgment, right? And that right judgment or the seamless ability to make right judgments, and that right judgment sort of comes from consistently doing something for a long period of time, knowing what works and knowing what doesn't work, and then that showing up in your process. So sort of taking this and bringing it to drawing. If you look at, say, someone who knows the drawing fundamentals, but when they draw a character, it looks like it was drawn by a koala. I'm a little pissed on that part, right? It's fine. Right? And then they say, maybe I need advanced art lessons. I'm like, buddy, you don't need advanced art lessons. You need to draw your freaking box as well. Yeah, straight up. That's it. don't understand the thing. But Kesh, I do know how to draw boxes well. I've drawn 300 boxes. Great. Now you need to learn the skill of how to practically apply those boxes in drawing good characters well. That is the thing. Okay, now that you've done that, then there are nuances. How do you make those characters coherent? And then after that, how do you make them stylistically coherent? And then after that, how do you sort of know how to add other elements in order to make the designs much better? How do you use stylistic principles in order to make that drawing better? See this? It's like basics on top of 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 basics. Again, lesson to myself as well, like to the guy you're listening to, it goes to him, me, basically. Just because you know it doesn't mean you actually know it. There is a difference between theory and practice, and everybody knows that too. There's a difference between theory and practice. Of course, like I know that, right? Yes, I know this. But do you? Like really, honestly ask yourself, do you actually know it? Is that an embodied lesson within your own self, right? And how do you know if it's an embodied lesson within your own self? Is this showing up in action? If it's not, then it's not an embodied piece of wisdom, right? It's just Googled information. At that point, like, yeah, I know how to start an investment firm and start angel investing, right? Like, I know how that works. Do I? I know the information. I don't know how to actually run a startup investment firm. Like, I don't know how to do that. Just like that, I know how to, I know how painting works, theoretically. I know how rockets work. Fire comes out of their back. There's a propulsion engine or jet fuel engine, and fuel is burnt in order to create fire, which creates force and thrust, and therefore ignite, even to some details and nuances, right? Like people know, right? But who's making rockets? Not me, right? So that is the whole thing. And this is a lesson that I've learned, or I'm constantly relearning. And it seems like a lot of lessons is something that needs to be reinforced and remembered, rather than just, just you seeking out new information. We need to be remembered more often than we need to be taught, right? Remembered as in we need to be reinforced the right things more often than we need to be taught new things. So this is something that I learned in the past 2 weeks as I sort of go deeper in my daily drawing practice. And then I just do this, that, like all these little changes I do to my lines and my shapes and my forms and my boxes and my cylinders. I'm like, holy mother of God. The devil is in the details, and so is God. That is it for today. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.